Andrew, Dow has been so important to the founding of FCLT Global. Can you just talk a little bit about why you see long-termism is so important?
You know, I think if I had to think about the founding of FCLT and how our predecessor conversations, the famous Dominic Barton article, Dominic and I knew each other for a fair while. McKinsey had done a lot of work with us. I had been frustrated, and I expressed my frustrations with him primarily, but others, saying, you know, why are all my shareholders so silent? Why can't I get to the people who care about my long-term strategy? Where are the business builders in this conversation in the owner class? Because we're transforming our company. It's not easy to transform a 120-year-old company. Management and the board is very committed. We've been working on this for, at that point, 7 or 8 years. We're about halfway through. But my owners seem disengaged, and worse still, they kind of are asking questions that they should have asked 7 years ago. They want the old Dow back. Well, what's the old Dow to you? The old Dow might have been bankrupted by then, might have been sold by then. So, and then the turnover in the shareholder base and who they would put in front of me were a lot of people who had no idea other than spreadsheets and were doing some of the parts analyses and short-term valuations. So I picked up on a trend, and I started talking to the politicians. I said, hey, are you regulating who owns companies? Why are the filing laws always retrogressive? Why don't we know who's in our stock? Why can hedge funds do things that institutionals can't? I was asking all those questions. I was getting no answers from the then Treasury Secretary and from some seriously smart people. So I just said, look, something needs to be done. So thankfully Dom was there, and Mark Wiseman and a few others, and we began the conversations that has led to FCLT Global.
Well, we're delighted that's the case. You talked a bit about the importance of shareholders being vocal, and the fact that maybe there aren't enough. There are some that are very vocal, and in particular the activists. Can you talk a little bit about the impact of activism on long-termism/short-termism?
Yeah, many people ask that question by saying it actually even specifically like, how can a 1% owner influence a company's direction and influence a company's board? How is that even possible? And of course, I've thought long and hard about that, because when one entered our stock and started making a lot of noise, therein I started asking all the other owners, well, do you want me to do what that 1% owner's asking? And I was stunned at the silence of most of our institutional owners, mostly the asset managers at the time, that they would say, look, you're doing the right things, but maybe they have a point of view. So, well, have you talked to them? Yeah, we have. I said, what have they shown with you? Now, we've given reams of information to the market, yet this third-party study seemed to have more credibility with people than what we'd been saying. So I said, well, maybe we have a communication problem. So we started doubling down and tripling down. I think one particular year we had over 245 investor interactions to ensure that this wasn't a communication issue. And of course what it was what we've now seen with social media and fake news, and you can change facts, is you can distort any company's story, their total shareholder return over time, CEO performance. You can distort it, get it out there in the media, have it occupy all the airwaves, take out the oxygen from the room, and before you know it, management now is completely distracted on handling that noise. So it was that sort of dynamic that made me realize that, the only true shareholders there that are there for the long term, firstly are the retails. Interestingly now, the index funds who have become a little less passive because they were noticing this dynamic, which of course includes BlackRock, one of the founders of FCLT Global, and then increasingly the long-term institutional asset owners who had patience money for the long term were very silent and were not aware of this dynamic. One of the things I'm most proudest with FCLT Global is we've now engaged them. And I am very excited by the opportunity that now presents to put metrics, accountability, and actually true processes in place that says to the asset owner what the board and the management teams of these companies they own are doing without all these people in the middle.
And why have the institutional owners been so quiet historically, and do you think that's sustainable given the dynamics of our communication infrastructure and other things? Is that sustainable going forward?
I think they've been quiet because the reality is it's been very hard for them to make money. And their bonuses and their track records in equity markets and money markets in an era of unlimited money supply, where you have trillions of dollars at negative interest rates, their performances and how they get measured themselves is more and more short term. And then good companies performing well, that's one storyline. But if you can have events which cause short-term pop in stock, which is what these activist hedge funds go for, let's break up that company. Let's get them to do more share buybacks. That can pump up the equity price and create the returns for these institutionals. So it was necessitated by performance. But there are things you're sacrificing when you're doing that. And that conversation, that loop was not closed. I think we're now closing it.
Yeah, great. Can you talk a little bit about a few of the things that you, as the CEO and chairman of Dow, did to address some of the activism that you experienced?
Yeah, fortunately, even before I even knew the term existed, we were doing some things which I would say now are absolutely necessary for any CEO and any board. I just think what's happened to all of us before our very eyes is what does it take to build a board today? Mm-hmm. What does a board member look like? What do they need to know? That has changed dramatically in the world we're describing, and that'll be one of the outputs, I think, of FCLT Global, which is we've just got to change the entire way boards get staffed, who's on boards and what they do and how they get measured. I think the owners, quite rightly, are saying, hey, my boards have let me down. Okay, they're not looking after my money, and there's some truth to that. I would say there's a bell curve to capability on boards. We've got to shift that bell curve, if you like, to the right, where if you take the axis on the bottom, we've got to increase the knowledge of the board on the strategy of the company. We've got to put in place metrics that actually say, here's how we know the strategy is working, and as Larry Fink's prone to say, here's the North Star, but here's the pivots we're making along the way, and the board is on top of those things. I think that type of board member, firstly, needs more time. Secondly, you've got to have some commitment to understanding things, site visits, visits to management in general, being proactive if you don't understand anything, thoroughness of preparation. I mean, I'm a board member at another public company, and I put a lot of work in reading everything before I get there, so that when I'm there, I'm the most value add. As someone's famously said, it's not the answer, it's the better question. And I think, getting board members of that type, I think the notion of just, joining an iconic board to have it as your reputation builder is all gone. I mean, the board member today is a working level job. It just has a different set of responsibilities and management, obviously.
Now, you are coming to the end of a very long transformation of a very important global company. Could you perhaps share a little bit of advice that you may offer to say a young or up-and-coming CEO who's looking to do something similar and build an organization for the long term? Yeah,
I'm so tempted to give the answer I give to that question, which is very demotivating. Because
it's not don't do it, I hope.
Well, it's just what's happened with the public markets undertaking a transformation of the portfolio and the earnings stream of what was a cyclical company diversified to a more focused company with constant earnings growth. The shareholder base changes on you. That shareholder was used to dividend. That shareholder was used to being a stock renter, buy on the way up, imagine the peak, sell on the way down, or on the way up, actually buy on the way down. I have the other way around. That type of owner versus a growth at reasonable price owner is a different type of shareholder. The time it takes to do that, you almost need to have either patience money in the stock, like a lot of retail investors, or a large one owner patient investor like a sovereign wealth, maybe be completely private, okay? Because as you try to do this on the run with quarterly earnings as your drumbeat, balancing both, I call it like what it must be like to fly a plane. I've got two sets of visuals, the one on the horizon and the one on the instrument panel in front of me. If I hit short-term volatility, the instrument panel has to come into play. I still got to go where I got to go. I might actually even have to take a little different path. So agility, being ready to pivot, having an explanation of why the quarter is not going to be met based on that long term, withstanding the short-term pressure of the volatility of stock price. The best piece of advice I would give to an up-and-coming CEO is try not to watch the daily stock price and don't read your Yahoo chatbot.
Very practical and very implementable. Thank you, Andrew, very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.